All right, you guys, welcome to your third web-based lecture. Today we are going to move up a little step on the pyramid. We are going to talk about limb 4, pranayama. So just like we did last time, I'm going to talk about why pranayama. We talked about why we do asana. Same thing here. I'm also going to give you kind of a background in terms of physiologically and anatomically what's going on that actually creates our breath pattern. It'll be important for you guys to have at least a base understanding of that to help you understand why pranayama is so important. Then we're going to talk about healthy breath pattern at rest and some potential issues that can come up. I'm sure that some of you guys will see these, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it. You just want to kind of identify some of these things, and then hopefully you'll be able to learn how to correct for them. And then we're also going to do a quick discussion on how pranayama or breath works with asana, how one affects the other and vice versa. And then per usual, you guys will have your homework assignment. So why pranayama? The word itself actually means an expansion or increase of life force. Prana means life force, yama means expansion. Commonly we refer to this as breath control. That's how I've largely referred to it so far. And just like with posture and asana that I use interchangeably, I will use pranayama and breath control pretty interchangeably. But the reason we talk about this as life force is because the body needs oxygen to stay alive. Good health basically coincides with the ability to inhale naturally and completely. You cannot be healthy if you're not inhaling properly, because if you're not inhaling properly, you're not actually getting the oxygen that your body needs to survive to each and every one of your cells. The flip side of this, and it's still pretty important, but we always want to talk about what we can do to increase and focus not so much on the things that we're doing to decrease. But the flip side is exhale. We exhale because we need to remove waste. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct of our metabolism. So even when we're just sleeping or sitting at rest, our body cells are at work and they're producing this waste product that, if we allow it to build up in our system, is actually poisonous. So the exhale is equally as important because we're getting rid of things that we don't want. Excuse me. This is important to understand because we're unable to breathe, inhale and exhale properly if tension exists. What's really critical for you guys to understand here is that tension can be physical, it can be mental, or it can be emotional, or it can be all three. And again, what's really critical to understand is that tension in one area of the self, the body, mind, or spirit, will create tension in the other two by extension. Okay? So kind of just two basic examples on the slide. Anxiety or stress, which we would call kind of a mental tension, can lead to a tense body and therefore a lack of proper respiration. Okay? Along the same lines, tense muscles, okay, can lead to a lack of proper respiration, which can lead to anxiety or stress. So you can kind of see from both of these examples, you can sort of put them together and see how this can be a really dangerous downward spiral. Okay, so again, sort of be keeping that idea in mind, and that tension is not necessarily just a physical manifestation. It can manifest as a mental issue or as a spiritual issue as well, or emotional if you want to think about it that way. So the physiology of breath. So again, this is essentially what's going on in our body in terms of what's moving around to actually create inhale and exhale. There's a little diagram on the right-hand side of the slide. If you're visual like I am, by all means, feel free to refer to that. But what happens is there are two phases in terms of our breath pattern: inhale and exhale. During inhalation, our diaphragm, which is a large sheet of muscle that sits right underneath our rib cage, okay, kind of in between our lungs and then all of our digestive organs, the diaphragm contracts. And when the diaphragm contracts, it actually presses down into our abdominal cavity. As that happens, our chest is allowed to essentially grow larger, okay? And when that happens, we inhale air. Air comes in and it flows into the chest via the throat and then hopefully down into the abdominal cavity as well. This is also assisted by muscle in terms of, again, our diaphragm is contracting to allow this expansion to occur. And there are teeny tiny little muscles that are in between each one of your ribs that will allow your rib cage to expand even further if it's necessary. So what's really important that you understand on this particular slide is that inhalation is active. Okay, we're not necessarily consciously thinking about it every breath that we take, but it is active. In other words, it requires muscular assistance. Exhalation, on the other hand, that's the second phase of breath, okay, is the opposite. As our diaphragm relaxes and presses back up into our chest cavity, air is naturally exhaled from our body or naturally let go from our body. So an exhalation is passive. It doesn't require the muscle to do anything but relax. And once a muscle's contracted, it always wants to go back to its relaxed state. That's going to happen regardless. So an exhale should occur on its own. Okay, it should never need any active input or any forcefulness, if you will. Which brings us to what is a healthy breath pattern at rest. And when I say at rest, I mean at true rest. I mean we are sleeping, we are sitting or lying down somewhere very relaxed. Your inhalation should occur at the nose with your mouth ideally closed or very, very slightly open. So in other words, when we inhale, air should be coming in through our nasal passages, down through our throat, and then into the lungs that way. We should be taking very little in at our mouth. Air should fill the chest cavity and then flow easily into the abdominal cavity and into your upper back. Exhale should arrive in its own time. Its length should be approximately equal to that of the inhale. Exhalation, because it's passive and because we're trying to get rid of waste and we don't really care, can occur either through the nose or the mouth. Okay? So inhale, we want air to come in through the nose. Exhale, we want air to exit just as long as it's leaving us. Because again, remember the exhale is that carbon dioxide byproduct. Potential issues with breath pattern. I won't lie, most of you guys are going to come across at least one or two of these over the course of this term. And like I said before, that's okay. The idea is to learn to identify it and to learn how to correct it. Okay, and step one is right here. Series of questions that you want to ask yourself when you're kind of observing your breath. Are your inhale and exhale phases approximately equal in length? If they're not, it may indicate that there's a lack of oxygen coming in. Maybe you're literally not getting enough good in your body. Or it could also signal that there's a need to remove a lot of carbon dioxide. Okay? Any of you guys who work out regularly should notice that on days when you exercise, especially if you do a lot of cardiovascular stuff, if you like jog, for example, that your exhales may be longer. And that's normal because your body's going to produce more carbon dioxide that has to be let go of when you exercise. So there are some instances where these aren't problematic at all. It's just indicating that there's something going on with your body. Is your breath shallow or not flowing into your abdominal cavity or back? So when I say shallow breath, I mean that you're only getting air into your chest. Okay, it's not flowing into your back and it's not flowing down into your tummy. Okay. This can indicate that there's a lack of strength in your diaphragm, that your diaphragm's actually not able to contract forcefully enough to allow your chest cavity to expand. It can also indicate that there's a lack of flexibility in your rib cage. Okay, and this is where Asana would come in to help strengthen and increase flexibility in those areas. Is breath flow or pattern being unconsciously held or restricted? At any point during your breathing pattern, are you unconsciously, so in other words, without thinking about it, holding your breath? Are you not letting an inhale occur, or are you not letting an exhale occur? This usually indicates that there's some sort of stress or tension in the mind, that there's something going on from a mental standpoint that is sort of causing you to do that. And then the fourth question you want to ask yourself, is your breath choppy, interrupted, or very quick? So anytime, again, where those inhales and exhales aren't equal, or perhaps you feel like you're sort of gasping for breath, that would indicate that there's stress or tension in your body somewhere. And again, back with my exercise example from the first question, that could just mean maybe you just jumped off the treadmill, in which case, yeah, your breath is going to be choppy, interrupted, or quick. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just want to make sure that in 10 minutes it's starting to return to its normal, even pattern. So breath with Asana. We are several classes in, and obviously when we're in PE 107, we've been doing a lot of work with Asana. We're going to be doing a lot of work with the Pranayama. Hopefully you guys have noticed that most of my movement cues to you guys have come with an either move on an inhale or move on an exhale. If you haven't noticed that, start paying attention. Hopefully the other thing that you've noticed is that a lot of my general cues are still cueing towards the breath. Okay, that's done for a reason. Each asana has a proper breath pattern that's associated with both entering and exiting the posture. So in other words, you should be breathing in or breathing out with motion. Once you're in an asana, the breath pattern should return to rest, although it may be quicker paced. So what you should see, even though it may be quicker than your normal breathing if you were just sitting in class, you should still have equal inhale, exhale, and that breath should be nice and smooth, and it should flow, again, down into your abdomen and into your back. Your general guidelines, okay, remember we talked about there's two phases, inhale and exhale of a breath. We do particular motions with a particular phase of breathing. Okay, and if you haven't noticed that so far, again, start paying attention. Inhale should occur during a back bend or any lifting or rising motion. Okay, back bends, that should make sense. If you remember back from our very second lecture, we talked about that back bends open up your chest cavity. So it would make sense that if we are opening our chest cavity, as what happens in a normal breath when our diaphragm contracts, it opens our chest cavity, that we are breathing in. Okay? Same thing, a lifting or a rising motion should just sort of make sense to you guys, that as we rise, we would want to inhale. So a couple of examples are on the slide for you guys just to sort of get the idea of what I mean by those. Exhales should occur during the opposite kind of motions. It's the opposite of the breath pattern from inhale, so it should make sense that it should occur during the opposite motion. So we should see, an exhale during forward fold. Remember, a forward fold is the opposite of a back bend. So if a back bend is opening our chest, a forward fold is compressing our chest. Therefore, we would want to exhale. Same thing with twists. Twists generally involve compression in our abdominal region, so the same thing there. Anytime we're compressing, we want to exhale. And then any downward or lowering motions is usually an exhale as well. Okay, so again, some examples for you guys to sort of be thinking about or be keeping in the back of your mind. Here's a practical example. We actually have not done sun salutation in class yet because sun salutation, if you remember, I mentioned is a vinyasa, so it's flowing. We will get to it. But this is how you would cue the first two postures of the sun salutation, which is mountain pose into standing forward fold. Inhale, bring your feet to the center of the mat. Make sure that they're square and firm under your hips. With your shoulders relaxed, begin to exhale and slowly bring your hands to heart level in prayer. Pause, inhale, and extend your arms above your head. Exhale and fold forward from the hips, placing your hands on the floor or on your shins. Okay, so again, 2 poses. The entire motion series always comes with a cue to inhale or exhale, so indicating how pranayama, how that breath is critical to asana. Following with that idea, individual asana may change your breath pattern while you're in the posture. And again, just like we move with certain inhales, exhales, this is usually due to compression or expansion of the chest or the abdomen. If you're in a posture where your chest is very wide open as a back bend, you're going to notice longer inhales, for example, because that's what your body wants to do. Typically, this will ease with several breaths, especially as you practice that particular asana. Additionally, this should lead to a restorative effect. You should see that your breath returns to its normal pattern very strongly after that particular asana. And the practical example on the slide is bow pose. We haven't gotten to it yet because it's a very intense back bend, but it expands and stretches the entire front body. It's a very, very intense chest opener, and there's a lot of stretch that occurs in your abdominal region. Initially, a lot of people will notice that they have a lot of gasping or very choppy breath when they first get into the posture. But hopefully what they see is either after several breaths or as soon as they exit the pose, they get a very deep breath. In other words, that they're able to, if they had sort of shallow breathing before, they're able to really get deep flowing breath into their abdominal cavity as soon as they exit bow pose. So that's a good thing. And this brings us to your third homework assignment. And what we're going to work on today are kind of 2 different activities for observing your breath. One is simple observation, and then the second one is an exercise called the 3-part breath. So what I want you to do, and I'm going to give you this set of instructions a lot, so spoiler alert, find a quiet place, okay? For these 2 particular activities, I do want you to be in an upright seated posture. For some of the other activities, I'm not super picky as long as you're comfortable, but because we're working on observing our breath and what's going on in our chest and our abdomen, I want you to be upright. But get yourself as comfortable as you can in that position. Find yourself a timer, set it for 2 minutes. And all I want you to do is start the timer and just observe your breath. Go back to those questions that we talked about in this lecture. Note your length of inhale and exhale. Are they equal? And all of the other features of your breath. Are you gasping? Is it choppy? Is your breath shallow? Are you unconsciously holding it? And just make a couple of notes about it. No rights, no wrongs. Just note it all. Your 3-part breath exercise has 3 parts. So remain in your seated position. You don't have to worry about the timer for this. But what you're going to do is you're going to place your hands over your tummy with your fingers pointing towards themselves at your navel. So put your right hand over the right side of your tummy, left over the left. And what you want to do is, as you take an inhale, you actually want to try and push your abdomen into your hands. Not necessarily forcefully, you more just sort of want to fill your hands with your abdomen. And I want you to repeat that a couple of times and kind of note, are you able to do that? Is it really hard? Again, all of those things that we've talked about. You're going to do that same thing with your hands in 2 different positions. Second position, you're going to move your hands up and you're going to put them on your rib cage right underneath your armpits. Okay, so you'll notice that your elbows kind of fly out at the sides of your body a little bit if you're in the correct position here. That's okay. But you're going to do the same thing. You're going to inhale and try and fill your hands with your rib cage. Again, repeat that several times. And then the last position that I want you to be in, extend your arms in front of your shoulders and clasp your hands lightly. Okay, think about this. A lot of you guys probably unconsciously do this as a stretch first thing in the morning, getting out of bed. That's where I want you to be. As you inhale, you're going to do 2 things here. You're going to try and press your palms away from you, and you're going to try and spread your shoulder blades apart. Okay, and again, note, how do you feel? Are you able to do it? That kind of thing. In the drop box, Submit a short essay to me about your resting breath pattern, which you should have made notes on in the observing section, and then how you felt during each of your exercises. Were you able to move your hands accordingly? Were things difficult? Again, were you noticing choppiness or gasping or any of those sort of things going on in your breathing patterns? And try and give me an indication why or why not. Why did you think things were happening the way that they were? Okay. So that is the last lecture for the second week, and I will see you guys in the next one.